As an adult human being, you've lived long enough to have experienced loss. That loss could be the loss of one or both of your parents, the loss of a sibling, the loss of your mentor, friend, or even a good client. Yes, loss could mean the death of somebody that you've loved, liked, or knew very well. Loss can also mean the loss of money, the loss of business, the loss of a job, the loss of an opportunity. Loss could also mean the loss of your freedom and your lifestyle, like you've experienced this past year due to COVID-19. Loss can mean lots of things to different people. It has occurred in your life and it will continue for as long as you live. As you know, the answer to dealing with all of these losses is how will you respond? How are you going to act or react? This is the topic of the 10-minute talk you're about to hear by John Checki Jr. John is 73 years old. He's lived a long time and has certainly had his share of loss, as you will hear in this very different kind of 10-minute talk. Plus, it's going to be delivered to you in a very different kind of way by a different speaker. John's a financial advisor, yes, with a successful practice in Richardson, Texas. Yes, John is a husband, a dad, a grandfather, and yes, one very unusual speaker. He has a very distinct speaking style. He has a choppy cadence to his words. He's not a person that speaks a lot, but he does speak when he feels he can help others. That's his goal for you today. To do that, he has created a two-part message. Part one is all about himself. Yes, he's going to share with you his losses. Then in part two, now that he has positioned himself in your mind as a person who has experienced loss, he's going to see if he can help you when you have to handle the losses in your life. As you know, you want to take advice from someone who has been where you are going. If John is to be a guide at your side, you need to know that he has experienced in those 73 years that he's been on earth. Again, so that there's no misunderstanding. Part one is about John's losses. Part two is going to be 9 helpful hints that you can use when loss occurs in your life. John's title is simply, How Do You Handle Loss? Please welcome John Checki Jr.
So happy you can say good morning, good evening, and good day, since we're all over the world at this time. My name is John Checki, and the first question I'd like to answer for you is, why in the world is a financial guy asking me, that is you, how do you handle loss? Used to be when we said loss, we thought of family or a husband or wife, financial problems, sickness, perhaps a tree limb falling through your roof. But thanks to COVID, we have a lot more loss than we used to have. And I want to open with, yes, there is hope. So stick to the end. For those of you who need to go down the hallway, I look forward to you seeing it the whole time. Let's imagine it's a wonderful Saturday morning. You're waving goodbye to your sweet little Katie, your 6-year-old daughter, who's had a variety of accidents in her lifetime, but she's just a delight. One of your kids asked, would it be okay to go to the back pasture and feed grass to the horses? I said, sure. Mother said, are you kidding? I said, no, it'll be okay. So I waved goodbye to the kids. They went on out to the back pasture. As I came out and finished my errands, I noticed my wife, who's not a jogger, was running across the pasture, carrying something, screaming something. The scream was, call 911. This is before cell phones. Called 911, an ambulance came over, fire truck came over, they put Katie in the ambulance. Her head had been cracked completely open, her brains were about. They waited and waited and waited. It was as if they didn't even want to go to the hospital. They just wanted Katie to die right there. Katie was a determined little girl. She waited until she got to the hospital a couple hours later and she died. Now, I don't know how that works for you, but no one wants to be a member of a club where you outlive one of your children. And suddenly we were members of that club. One of my kids wanted to kill herself. My wife never wanted to go home. And oddly, my wife started to drink a lot more, get more depressed. We got through what we needed to do. We asked for help, which I always suggest first. Ask for help. Seek expert advice. We went to see a minister. What did the minister say? Well, we asked him, gee willikers, since Katie was only 6, hadn't reached the age of reason yet, we think she went to heaven. He said, that's the fundamentalist view. I'm not really sure where Katie went. We thought a lot of things I'm not going to say out loud. So we just switched churches after a while. Get godly counseling, but check the source to make sure they're actually reading the book they're supposed to be reading. So what did I do? Sold my old car collection, kept my CPA practice together, did my best to keep my marriage and family together. And you can tell from the second story that I'm about to tell you, my poor wife suffered a great deal after that accident. She kind of got to be a manic depressive, suicidal alcoholic, but I promised myself I would stick to her right to the very end and not pass go. One morning, I was reading one of my favorite publications, which I highly recommend, Bottom Line Personal. It said, husbands, your wives love to have you. Give them a long, slow, I love you kiss and tell them how much you love them. So I thought I can follow directions. So I went into my bedroom, gave her a big kiss, told her how much I loved her. She looked at me wondering, is there something wrong? I said, nope, it's just fine. And since she was famous for traveling, she's about to take a trip down to San Marcos to see kids and grandkids. Do you have any money? She said, nope. I said, I gave her some money. If you want to know if she had to do anything for it, you know how wives can be funny sometimes when they're a little nervous. I said, nope, I just want you to have a good time. A couple hours later, one of the kids called wondering why mom wasn't already there. A little while after that, a policeman drove up to our house. He asked me if I was John Checki, was I married to Helen Janice Checki? I said, yes. He said, you need to call the medical examiner's office in Austin. I asked him, is my wife dead? And he said, do you need the number? I called Austin, got voicemail. Nothing quite as delightful as voicemail. After a while, I called back, got a guy on the phone. He said, the person working the case is on the case. I really can't tell you anything. I said, sir, I need to know what happened to my wife. Please go down the hallway and get permission to tell me what happened to my wife. He came back and said she died of speed and alcohol. I thought, Janice does not do speed. And he said, no, the car was speeding and she was intoxicated. The intoxicated part did not surprise me. So what do? How do you recover from being the member of 2 clubs no one wants to join? Outliving a child, outliving your spouse. Well, if you're a widower in North Central Texas, it's an adventure because there are a whole bunch of women that have been impatiently circling around you, waiting to get you, waiting to get to know you better. And I was warned in advance by clients who've been through it already that within 3 weeks, my phone would start ringing and some crazy ladies would be wanting some information on financial planning. Within a couple of months, I had 3 marriage proposals, and just for fun, sadly, it's not supposed to be funny, but it's going to be funny, sorry. When I would go to Prestonwood Baptist Church, I'd make it a point to sit in the single section with nobody around me, and suddenly 6 blondes would just manifest themselves on either side, 2 in the front, and then 2 backups. It was fascinating. So if you have a nice car and you can dance and sing and make people laugh, yeah, you'll have no trouble meeting a replacement. Something about the difference between single people and married people. Married people, especially pops and moms, are used to sharing, and people who've never had kids have a real hard time with it. Just like when you get sick, folks think you should be well. Which brings me to the hit. Some of you have seen the movie The Godfather. Some of you might have even remembered a character called Luca Brasi. Well, my Uncle Willie was the guy that they patterned Luca Brasi after. Uncle Willie provided the muscle for the Colombo gang. My dad worked for him in gambling joints. I want to make sure you get that part. And Uncle Willie was subpoenaed to talk before Congress, did so, gave silly testimony because he was losing his brains thanks to syphilis, and then he was assassinated. How did that affect my family? My father's income went from $250 a week, which was a lot of money back in 1951, to $50 a week. He went from being a guy that hung out in gambling joints to a guy wearing a blue collar and welded. How did our family react? I'm not going to say respond, but react to that. We learned to amuse ourselves. We learned to play outside a lot. We shot a lot of baskets, organized some basketball things in our backyard. We learned how to eat a lot of pasta. Back then, we call it Max, short for macaroni. We learned to be self-starters. It was real helpful for my brother and I. My brother's in the Hall of Fame of the Equitable Life Assurance Association. And here I am, a member of Genius Network, and you don't get here for free either. This one will be the hardest. When I was a little kid, my mother got pregnant for the third time. I'm 73. I say only 73. My brother's 71, but he actually looks 71. He's dying of 3 different things. My youngest brother lived to be 45. That's 45 minutes old. He was born with an umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. Dr. Latona couldn't save him in St. Mary's Hospital. My father came out of the hospital, said, your mother had a boy. He had big ears, and he died. Now, we were little kids. We were just sure he was kidding. So we literally said, oh, you're kidding. What really happened? And he said, no, he's dead. We're going to the Pink Elephant. We had a wonderful Italian dinner, but we were in no mood to eat it. A couple other things, but I'll just close with one. And you can hear my voice crackle because this is not a pleasant speech. In 1986, tax law changed, and suddenly Dallas, Texas started renaming its banks. The real estate business went completely bust, and several companies for which I was working evaporated. So I had to have a complete career change. And if you're a certified public accountant, you hardly ever have to make a speech or talk to anybody, or you just do that a lot. Well, as a financial advisor, it was completely different. How to get a personality transplant, how to learn to smile a lot, how to learn to market, be nice to people. And it's a very out-of-body experience to be investing money for other people. Personally, I've been making investments for myself since I was a little kid, because when your parents don't have very much money, it gangs up on you in terms of wanting to do better. Let's get to some solutions, shall we? First thing you want to do is get some help. Now, just before I made, Kathy Bach got up here and gave some wonderful ideas of what you can do, the side effects associated with long-term COVID. When you get your help, you can go to Widowed Person Services. Let me tell you in advance that Widowed Person Services does their best to pair you up at hello. So get used to the idea that everybody and their dog thinks that a widower is a fully trained unit craving directions. So be aware of that. And if you do become a widower, please take 2 years before you sign your life away. Learn to breathe. That sounds ridiculous, but learn to breathe on purpose. Take a walk. It's hard to be depressed while you're walking around the block taking pictures of beautiful things. Eat sensibly. This is the number 3 problem that people have. They suddenly feel like, well, hell, I'm so depressed. So many things bad happen to me. I think I'll just get fat and stupid. Not that people who are fat are necessarily stupid, but it's not good for your health. Get plenty of rest. One of my biggest challenges. If you do drink, and I'm talking about alcohol, be sure and be careful with it. One of my favorite solutions is go see comedies. There's nothing quite as refreshing as looking at a comedy. There's another step. It's the 9th, but I am going to throw in a 10th. The 9th is realizing you are never going to get over this. Loss is real. Your memories are real. It's a long process. You might get angry. You might feel abandoned. You might feel gypped. The nice thing about being a widower is you can actually talk to your wife and she can't interrupt you anymore. Final point. One of my friends said, John, you're kind of naturally funny. Why don't you go to stand-up comedy school? And if you've never been challenged to try and make a room full of half-drunk people who are trying to figure out who they're going to spend the night with to think you're funny, it's quite a challenge. My home office said to be sure and let everybody know your full disclosures are at checkifinancial.com. And we did write a book, and we should be smart enough to actually hold that up. It's called Spend Time, Save Money. And you can look that up on Amazon. It's been my distinct pleasure to now get evaluated by Joel Weldon.